Going on here? Hi, everybody. I'm here. Um, I welcome to another evening of good natured. I'm thrilled to be here, and hopefully you are too. Uh, I kind of went back and forth about sitting outside tonight because there are still a few clouds in the sky, but it looks like the forecast is going to be clear. So fingers crossed, we'll be together like this for the next hour. Um, those of you longtime viewers probably know the things aren't always the smoothest functioning here in the production quality at Casa Auto. I had things laid out uh, a little in preparation for tonight, sort of uncharacteristic of me. One of the things I'd set out was the jewelry case. Some of you might recognize this. I thought it might be, I headed out for our KCCN field trip on Saturday, and I thought it might be fun to open it up again since it is somewhat relevant. Well, you probably can't see, it's all wet on one end. I don't know if it was Kit or Boker, but one of the furry roommates decided that there must be really good things in here, and they went running down the hallway with it. I got it back from them. I think everything inside is unscathed. So let's just look, shall we? I have to say, some of these are actually turning into relics, antiques. This, well, let's put them that way. This is an Eastern mole that I've had since I worked at Red Oak Nature Center. So we're talking pre 2007, which is when I started at St. Charles. Um, it's a really useful teaching aid because moles, we see signs of moles all the time in areas where they're prevalent. They tunnel through the soil with these spade-like front feet. But you never really ever see the mole unless a predator digs one up, which is the case with this. This was actually found. Oh, it looks like I got to do some repair. I don't know how much longer that back leg's going to be hanging in there. Um, the, the other one's already come off. Anyway, I found this on the driveway at Red Oak one Saturday morning when I was going into work, and I couldn't believe how perfect its condition appeared to be. Well, one of our part-timers at the time, she actually went on to manage the nature center. Some of you might know Miss Margaret. She had just had a course in small mammal skin prep, study skin prep. So she helped me slit this open, and we kind of turned it inside out and stuffed it. You can see the 20-some-year-old gauze is still poking out of the mouth there. But I am amazed at the number of times I've found use to bring this mole out. The most recent being this past Saturday, we were at, as I mentioned, Johnson's Mound, our King County Certified Naturalist field trip. And I actually didn't see a lot of mole activity. The mound there is made out of glacial debris, so it's not ideal for tunneling by small animals like this. But it is a time when the bats have returned to the picnic shelter there. Now, bats and moles actually share a lot of things, similar dentitions, a similar approach to life. They're insectivores. It's just the mole does its business underneath the ground, and the bats do theirs up in the sky. I also wanted to show this because sometimes people say mole, vole, what's the difference? Well, unfortunately, I don't have a vole here in my little jewelry box, but uh, they're also known as meadow mice. They aren't really mice, though. They are voles with a V. They are chunky. They're like mice with all the edges rounded. They've got a broader face, smaller ears, less pointy nose, um, a shorter tail. That is a vole. This is a Like my other finger out there. Mole. There's a couple other things in here. We've got some mole relatives too. This is a short-tailed shrew. We find these on the trail. I think it was in last week's slides. We actually saw not the short-tailed shrew, but the least shrew. There were a couple of those that had been predated on the trail at Hickory Knolls. These shrews, I mean, they are wee, teensy tiny. There's in relation to my hand. I actually, believe it or not, I don't have a lip balm on me today, but these two are insectivores. They are not mice, even though this particular shrew does have a pretty long tail. This is an adult. It's not going to get any bigger. It's got, if we were able to see in its little shrew mouth, we would see that it has it's got incisors, it's got canines, it's got molars, it's got all the dentition required for eating animal protein. Same with this guy, although we might be able to, I don't know if the lighting's quite right here. The mouth just looks dark on the camera. Can you see? Yeah, you can kind of see it's blurry, but those lower teeth there, as are the uppers, they are a dark, bloody red color. That sound, I don't know if you guys can hear that. That is the sound of the lightning detector at Geneva High School. And one long blast means lightning. We'll see. We're gonna hang in. There's a few little raindrops coming down, but we're gonna keep our fingers crossed. If more raindrops come down, we might have to take a brief intermission and head back inside. All right. Well, that was it for our jewelry box show and tell. I've also got this. I took some pictures of this as well, and we will see these in the slides, but this is a cocoon that I have to say I am just giddy with anticipation over. It's been in my garage all winter. And when I took it out, it was inside of a fruit jar with a screen lid to prevent any mousies that are in the garage from chewing open the cocoon. This is a really common food source for a lot of animals that are active in the wintertime. When I took it out, it was very rattly. And I thought, oh gosh, I didn't do a good job of keeping humidity in that little jar, and humidity, a lack of humidity is a killer for a lot of different types of insects. I thought, oh gosh, I wonder if this poor little thing dried out over the course of the cold weather months. Well, I don't know. I'm gonna hold it up to the. It's less rattly now. Whatever. Hopefully, it's the moth pupa that's in there and not some parasitoid. But it is getting larger, and it's not nearly as rattly as it was when I first took it out. I have moved it to an equipped side here, where it is surrounded by outdoor humidity, which seems to be increasing rapidly around here. There's more raindrops coming down. But hopeful that this is going to transform in the next couple of weeks. I've got a stick in there ready for it to, in the aquarium out here, ready for it to climb up on if and when it does emerge. I do have pictures as we get into the slide so you can see what a polyphemus moth looks like, but this is the polyphemus cocoon from last fall. Okay, let's move along. I got a really great good news kind of email a couple of weeks ago, and it got kind of pushed down in the queue there in the inbox. So I wanted to bring it back up again while it's still partially relevant. It concerns our frog monitoring efforts in some of our parks, specifically at Fearson Creek Fen. This is from a monitor. She's actually been monitoring at the Fen for a few years now. She writes that I wanted to share a couple of recordings from the other night at Fearson Creek Fen. I stood there with my mouth gaping as I stepped out of the car and heard spring peepers there in the middle of the Fen. 2 years ago, in 2022, I noticed them I noted hearing them, but it was barely a faint call. It was off in the distance. It was coming from the area where the creek opens into the river. So if you're familiar with Pearson Creek Fen, if you're local, you'll know that that would be at the southeast part of the nature preserve, of Pearson Creek Fen Nature Preserve. Last year in 2023, I definitely heard them in greater numbers in that same area along the creek, but it was still off in the distance. Yesterday, the peepers had moved northward throughout the riparian habitat that the ecological restoration crew has been working on. The frogs are still present in small enough numbers that I can count individuals depending on where I'm standing. But I tell you, it is amazing how they have moved right in where the habitat has been restored. They're super loud too. I would bet that the monitors across the river at Norris Woods can likely hear them too. I just hope the flooding doesn't kill off all the sedges we worked to plant. More argument to take off the dams. All right, we're getting a little towards advocacy here, but she just wanted to let us know that the hard work at the Fen is paying off. So good news, even better for you guys, she included a video. So can you hear the thunder? All right, I'm going to play the video and then we will take a brief intermission and I will take this inside because now it's starting to, the wind is starting to pick up a little bit too. But let's see, we can share the screen and pick the video here. All right, we're screen sharing. Oh boy, hold on, let me try this one more time. It's one of those things. Well, that was the last we heard from her. All right, I'm gonna try this one more time. We're gonna share. And we're gonna optimize for sound this time. All right. And now we're gonna pick the video. I'm sharing the screen. I'm gonna move this out of the way and we're gonna play this video. Ready? Go. Peep, 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 peep. Isn't that amazing? And folks, whether you're local or not, oh, I'll wait for them to quit peeping. So isn't that super cool? That area 5-6 years ago was solid cattails. And in this area, when we say cattails, we're mostly talking about the invasive narrow-leaf cattail. Most, if not all, the cattails in that area have been removed, replaced with sedges. It's a much more open habitat, and as you can hear, it is much preferred by our little springtime breeders, the spring peepers. In a subsequent email, Erica said that she also heard leopard frogs, boreal chorus frogs, and a tree frog too. So lots and lots of good things happening there at the Fen. All right, I'm gonna kill the video and the audio here, and I'm gonna run inside. Don't want you to get dizzy or anything. We will reconvene in about 60 to 90 seconds. Okay, I'll see you in just a few. Okay, sorry about that, folks. We're in here where it's dry now, and it's a lot less windy, um, less lightning and thunder too. Um, so let's see, where were we? I got a towel here because it did start to rain right there at the very last second as we were coming in. So we were talking about the fen. Let's go ahead and sashay on over to our week's worth of slides. Lots of cool things are happening out there. And I think I've mentioned in the email, a surprise visitor, one I really didn't think it was time for. So let's go ahead. We're going to share the screens again. We're going to pick this time. We're going to go with this one. And go to our slides, and we're going to start off with things that are blooming. So last week I had the honor and the privilege to escort the students of the Potawatomi preschool's pre-K classes on a walk over to Delnor Woods. And they're polite, they were respectful. They really, I don't know if they'd ever been in the woods before. There was one little boy in the first walk who seemed at home. He actually recognized a couple of the flowers that we were talking about. He, however, had not met this one, which is the Jack in the Pulpit. These are blooming right now. This is a pretty cool plant. It's got a complex little way of enticing its pollinators into this spathe and spadix arrangement of the flower and the reproductive parts here. As the fly comes in and gathers pollen, it sometimes gets trapped down here so that it has to stay and do its job. Jack in the pulpits can actually sometimes turn out to be Jill in the pulpits. This is a flower where they're either male or female, and that can change from year to year. But when it's a female flower that gets pollinated, that Jack, which in the case is going to be a Jill, then turns into a really lovely, large, looks like a giant red raspberry. Look for those as we get into late summer, say early September, usually when we start to see those. But they are looking quite lovely now. They're in the woods. This is Jacob's ladder. It's in this case was being visited by one of our ground dwelling bees. I believe this is an adrenid bee. I wrote Terry Measley, he's our local native bee expert. I said, Terry, I thought I had a handle on some of these local bees last year. I felt more confident than I did this year. And he said, even for him, it's an act of reacquaintance every year to kind of sort out who is whom. But you can see how this bee is going right for the heart of this flower. And this is a spring wildflower that does produce both pollen and nectar. Sometimes the early spring flowers, they skip out on the nectar part. The nectar is offered to pollinators as an enticement, but it does cost the flower extra to put that nectar out there. Bloodroot is an example of a flower that does not produce nectar. But anyway, the bees, the day we were there, it was not super warm, I would say, maybe around, upper 50s or so, but it was certainly warm enough to have the little pollinators doing their jobs there in the woods. There's even an ant there crawling on some wild ginger. Now, this is a plant. I tossed it in here. This was not at Delnor Woods, but it was about that same time. I was also out at Hickory Knolls. This is a cool plant called wood betony, Betony. And it's hemiparasitic, which means it's partially parasitic. It's capable of producing its own food through photosynthesis, but it can also take food from the roots of other plants. Really interesting strategy, a really interesting approach to its life. It's typically more in sunny areas. This isn't really a woodland plant, but it is a plant that blooms earlier in the season than what we would usually see in a lot of our open fields and prairies. Here's a look at it from above. You can see how the flowers grow in a whorl around the stems. It's a neat little plant, often overlooked and underappreciated, but it is blooming right now, right next to our prop area. If you haven't been to Hickory Knolls in a while, or even if you have and you only went into the nature center, this is cool space that just keeps getting better and better. This is immediately south of the nature center, and it is well, it used to be just a scrubby, in fact, years ago it used to be where they parked some of the mowing equipment that was used on the athletic fields at the community park part of the complex there. It was box elders and mulberries. There was a really thick hedge of buckthorn enclosing the area. It was pretty secure, actually, because not so much that it was impenetrable, but it was the tractors were so camouflaged in amidst all of that scrubby growth that nobody ever vandalized one or stole one. But look at how open this is now. These are flats upon flats of native seeds that are being tended to. That's actually Jill Votel. They're doing some watering. The park district backed up the naturalist department's commitment to propagating native seeds by installing a couple of spigots out there. So the team no longer has to run a hose all the way out from the nature center to this prop area. But it's really cool. There's actually also, I think I mentioned this when we were talking about toads a week or two ago. There's an area that's a shallow pool that they've created for growing aquatic or emergent aquatic plants. And it's saving the park district a lot of money instead of having to buy these plugs. We still will be buying some, but Jill, with her horticulture background, is able to cultivate a lot of these things, and they are destined for great things in our natural areas. It's check it out if you happen to be there. It's also gosh, I don't have a picture of it, but just to the east of this prop area, there is a growing native tree arboretum. That's Patrick, another member of our restoration team. He's a tree guy, and he thinks it's important, we all do, that it's good to know your trees. So that's another area under development outside of the nature center to the south. So while I was over there, I kept hearing the repeated calls of a bird that you might be able to see in this photo. It was pretty far away, but with good reason. So this, if you're familiar with the area, this is a gravel parking area. It's actually staff parking for when we're having events at the nature center. Over here is a portion of the off-leash dog park. This is where the smaller dogs can go and hang out safely away from the bigger dogs, which would be off to the right. Well, if you look right here, I'm going to see if I can zoom in. You're going to see this is, I don't know if it's mama or papa killdeer. And then if we look closely over to the right, we see baby number 1. And over here on the left, we see baby number 2. Of course, maybe this is baby number 1 and this is baby number 2. I don't know. They're awfully similar. And they were awfully far away too, but it was really cool to hear the parents, killdeer, killdeer, killdeer. They were calling to them, and then the babies were making tiny little peeping sounds. This is as crummy as it looks. This is optimal killdeer habitat. They love these gravelly areas. They're out there picking up bugs, and they blend in remarkably well. I would imagine the nest, which I think this year was, let's see, Jill said she saw it over in the prop area. And, it was an early nesting, and some of you too might recall this was the killdeers had opted to nest in the nature play area. another year. And then the nature play area is on the other side of the nature center. It gets a lot of kids. It gets a lot of traffic. We actually had several hundred kindergartners coming out for field trips, and we're all using that proper play area. So this year, I think the birds decided, this seems a lot quieter over here. They seem to be doing just fine, and they are absolutely adorable. All right, let's zoom this out. Let's go to the next slide here. So we'll go from adorable to kind of ew, but what was adorable was the kids' reaction. So now we're back at Delnor Woods. This was a different day, different group of preschoolers on the field trip. There was a little boy, I believe his name was Francis. He is a nature nerd through and through at that tender young age, but he was just fascinated by this stuff. This is a slime mold known as dog barf. I think it's called dog barf fungus, but it is a slime mold that often erupts in wood chips. It doesn't, like, some of these things have a season like spring or summer or fall. This can pop up pretty much anytime, especially if the conditions are moist, and it kind of creeps its way across the wood chips. I did have a lip balm with me that day, so you can get a sense of the size. This was one of many of these slime molds that were growing there in the relatively freshly laid wood chips. The playground at Delnor Woods is brand new this year, so they when they finished it, they put down fresh chips that clearly were carrying the spores for this mold. I tried to look up, but I have not been successful in figuring out what this insect is. I first thought it was a beetle, but if we zoom in, I'm not so sure that it is. These are wings, and it looks like there's a little triangle here, which would identify this insect as a member of the Hemiptera, or the true bug family. If I'm able to figure it out, I will definitely let you guys know. But for now, we'll just call it the slime mold bug. But it seemed to be feeding on that. This is little Francis here. He was just fascinated by, well, actually, he was also a little bit concerned because his classmates didn't seem to be showing the slime mold any respect. That's a big old footprint in here. I was kind of surprised too at the deep color. Whenever I've seen this stuff growing, it is kind of this, it goes from like a yellowish to like a tan color. But I, oddly enough, have never opened one up. And here someone had stepped on it, and it's this crazy like brick red color on the inside. Francis, I felt a little bad for him. Oops. Let's go back here one more second. He had seen me picking up some trash, and there was a Go-Gurt, the squeezable yogurt. There was one of those on the ground. There was a couple other baby spoon, like maybe somebody had been feeding their child and dropped their spoon in the wood chip. So anyway, I picked this stuff up, and little Francis started picking up trash too. And his teacher scolded him and said that he shouldn't be picking things up. So I was kind of stuck. I didn't want to, overrule the class rules, but he was really just, mimicking the behavior, trying to, help this playground the same way I was. So I don't know, I gave him a little, thumbs up, even though he got in trouble for it. But he, I think, watch for the name, Francis of St. Charles. I think we've got another budding nature nerd, and he was just so curious about everything. Great little kid. Now this, you can maybe see what I was going for here, and I wasn't going to show this picture, and I thought, no, you know what, this really underscores one of the Baltimore Orioles' lesser known traits, and that's, even though this bird is black and orange, It can be hard to see, especially as the leaves get bigger and bigger on the trees. And by the way, the trunks do seem to be um, quite a bit ahead at that field trip I mentioned last Saturday at Johnson's Mound. We've had that field trip at that forest preserve in Elburn for well over a decade at that same time, the first weekend in May. And we, at that time, the leaves are usually quite small. This year, the leaves are big. You know, it made it kind of hard to scan the canopy. It's always a good field trip for birding. It's birding is always easier when the tree leaves are small or if there's no leaves. But early spring, we've got our migrants coming back, and when the leaves are small, it's easy to see them. It wasn't so easy this time because the leaves are much farther ahead than we're accustomed to seeing at that time of the year. Well, this was actually at Fabian Forest Preserve, but this oriole was up at the top of this oak tree. I did try to zoom in with my camera, but the way the light hits these leaves, there's kind of a yellowish green quality to the leaves, and then there's the deep shadows present with the leaves. And look at how the color works for this bird. The orange, I'm sure other orioles are well aware of him, but if he hadn't been singing, we probably wouldn't have seen him at all. They do tend to blend in there amongst those leaves. Now, I had taken this picture at Potawatomi, and I was actually looking for orioles that day too. We're going to do a program on orioles the first part of June for the Adult Activity Center. And I was looking at the difference in how some trees leaf out sooner than others. Here we've got an oak tree on the left, and what is this tree here on the right? Looks like, is that a linden? Yeah, I think that's a linden or basswood tree. And it's much farther along in its leafing out. Orioles, they as they were the male was singing, they were choosing their territories. They like to build at the end of these branches, and oftentimes they will choose an oak, sometimes a willow. They like to have space because they build those pendulous nests that hang down. And I could just picture them. There was an oriole singing. He was actually a couple of trees over from where I took this picture, but I could see how it would be easier to build in a tree that isn't quite as leafed out as this basswood. They definitely show a preference for these oak trees in Potawatomi. That being said, I have yet to find, I was really hoping I could find one of last year's nests at Potawatomi. I didn't see that either, but I'll keep my eyes open and see if we can figure out just where the orioles are going to call home this year at Potawatomi Park. So boy, we are just bouncing all over. Now we're back at Fabian Forest Preserve. Again, for local folks, you might have noticed the extreme brush removal that has been going on at the eastern portion of Fabian Forest Preserve. It's very noticeable when you're on Route 25. The Forest Preserve District hired contractors to come in with brush mowers and just really take out all of there was such a thick undergrowth of buckthorn. I think a little bit of honeysuckle too, but I think there was a lot of buckthorn in there. And they took it all down, and with the open, look how open these woods are now. You can see, through, whereas this used to be just a thick tangle of shrubbery. It's much more open now. It allows the sunlight to penetrate down from above. From a distance, I was walking with the nature nerd group the other day, and we saw this, and there was just a little glimmer of hope that could this be, enormous patch of leeks. wild leeks, which would be very appropriate for this habitat. However, this is Fabian Forest Preserve is the grounds of the former the Fabian estate, and as such, there is a lot of cultivated or ornamental plants that show up there. These were not wild leeks; these are lilies of the valley. You can see some of them blooming there. It smelled nice, but it's a remnant from the Fabian estate days, as opposed to some of these other things we saw, which are coming up. They've got the right conditions finally, so they're not no longer being shaded out, so they're starting to pop up. This was a little start of trout lilies. And this is not anything that's been seeded or planted. These are just coming up in response. These are seeds that have been lying dormant, just waiting for the right conditions to come back. Yeah, there was some garlic mustard too. That's going to be part of it for a while, but hopefully it won't dominate over time. All right, now we're going to go back to Johnson's Mound. I had mentioned that our field trip there the other day. This photo just struck me for a couple different reasons. We've got a few things going on here. A lot of times when we're interpreting the scenes there at Johnson's Mound, we like to talk about the qualities of jewelweed, which is this plant right here at the top. Jewelweed is a wild impatiens. A lot of people recognize the name impatiens from the ornamental bedding plants that they put in flower boxes and things like that. Well, impatiens is actually the genus name of a large group of plants, and this is one of the native forms of it. It grows in moist areas, of which they actually line the lower part of the road that goes up the Kame at Johnson's Mound. Well, when you've got jewelweed, oftentimes the conditions will also be good for growing these other plants you see here, which are stinging nettles. And boy, I get the question all the time: stinging nettles. Why? Why do you think stinging? Why do you think they're so great? Well, I love the plant's defense of having these hairs that have an acid that protects the plant. If you brush up against stinging nettles, you know it immediately, because they really do sting. These hairs are made to come off. They're called urticating hairs, and they stick you. It's an immediate sensation, but it's not nearly as long lasting as, say, poison ivy. Whereas poison ivy, you might not even realize you've touched it until 2 or 3 days later, when the oils have triggered an allergic reaction on your skin, and that can sometimes take weeks to clear up. Stinging nettles, it's a much more immediate, ooh, that stings. The cure is growing right here. The fleshy stems and leaves of the jewelweed can be rubbed on the stinging hairs of the stinging nettles, and does a pretty good job of calming that sensation. But then the other thing I thought that was so cool is here we've got this little butterfly right here. We talked about these, forget if it was last week or a few weeks ago. This is a red admiral butterfly, and it was soaking up some sun on that beautiful spring morning. Well, this red admiral, lo and behold, guess what plant it uses as the host for its eggs and caterpillars? This one right here, the stinging nettles. So I was really hoping it might do some ovipositing, some egg laying while we were standing there. It didn't. It seemed rightly so, much more interested in soaking up sunshine. But I would like to get out to Johnson's Mound again and look at some of the stinging nettles to see if I could find some of the red admiral caterpillars. They breed so early in the season that we'll probably have another group of adults before we get through summer. And since we're staying with arthropods here, this was a kind of a fun find. One of the members of our class found this millipede making its way across the road there. She did a little rescue. And when we went to put it on this log to get it out of harm's way, we found a younger version of this same species. This is the American millipede, Narcissus americanus. It's probably, dare I say, the largest millipede we have in this area. And we're probably, if you spend much time outside, you know, moving plants around in pots or moving rocks or moving logs, you see a lot of millipedes that are maybe in the 1 to 2 inch length range. Those are, I think just about all of those are species that have come to this country accidentally. European, one of them is called the very common one is called the greenhouse millipede. They don't get very large. There's nothing really wrong with them. I don't know that they're really harmful. They're just they've been introduced here, but this is a truly American species, a much larger species, and one that we don't see just anywhere. I've seen these at Johnson's Mound and at Norris Woods, but they, I would say this lower one here might be 1 or 2 years old, and then this upper one here is probably 3 or 4 years old. They are detritivores. Their millipedes are different from centipedes in that they do not have any venom. Both millipedes and centipedes have a lot of legs. Millipedes will have 2 pairs of legs for each body segment. You can kind of see them down here, whereas centipedes will have just 1 pair of legs per body segment. The centipedes up by their head, their first pair of legs over time have modified into a pair of fangs. And that's how they inject the venom into their prey. Millipedes are much more peaceable. They crawl around on all of those little legs, going through the leaf litter, helping break down and aid in the decomposition process there in the woods. Now, this was kind of cool. As part of our field trip, we were talking about woodland ecosystems, talking about the spring ephemerals, of which there are still many in bloom there. This is one, though, that has already bloomed and has gone to seed. This is a sprig from Dutchman's breeches. And once those flowers are done blooming, they form these little seed pods that I think look like little parasols. We look at these here hanging down. But look what's happened over here. This is one of the plants. I think we talked about these before. This is a plant that adds a little enticement to the seeds. It's trying to lure some workers in to get these seeds dispersed. The workers in this case are ants. And I always thought that these seed pods would pop open, the seeds would fall to the ground, and then the ants would carry them away. But in this case, I'm kind of wondering, I can't say for sure who chewed these open, but I wonder if it was the ants that they just couldn't wait to get to the seeds. The seeds have that little enticement of, it's called an elaiosome. It's sugar and fat. I call it the frosting, because what is frosting but butter and sugar? Well, in this, it's not butter, but it is it's fat. And some carbohydrates, both of which the ants will make good use of, but they don't eat the seed. They just carry it back to their colony, eat that elaiosome off, and then toss the seeds into the little landfill that every ant colony has. And from there, the plants form, the seeds form new plants the following year. But I hadn't seen this. I would think that if it was, a mammal, that the bite marks, there would be obvious bite marks there. I'm gonna guess that maybe these are the work of ants. If I hear something different, I'll let you know, but that was kind of cool. I had not seen that before. And then this is a plant we have talked about. In fact, I think I even showed you some of the clusters of fruit that form on this plant. It's a almost perfectly round ball of very dark berries or fruit that we see in late fall, and they oftentimes persist through the winter. This is a carrion flower plant, and this is how those clusters of fruit start out. These are the somewhat easily overlooked flowers of the carrion flower. I had to push the leaves aside to see these round balls of flowers here growing underneath. Now this is another area undergoing some renovation, also at Johnson's Mound. So you can see again the large pieces of shredded trees. Probably buckthorn, honeysuckle, maybe some box elder. But in this case, rather than delightful little spring wildflowers, we have a lot of poison ivy. This is right next to the parking lot at Johnson's Mound. Leaves of 3, let it be. You can see these plants are all early in their growth phase. Oh, here we've got not poison ivy, we've got 5 leaves on these stems. This would be some Virginia creeper coming in over here. But yeah, there was quite a bit of poison ivy coming up here. I could just imagine this is a spot where people park their cars, their dogs get out. Dogs run through poison ivy. They don't react to it. However, remember, it's the oil in the plant that causes our allergic reactions. If that oil gets on the dog's fur, and then the owner pets the dog, well, they stand a chance of getting that rash too. Hopefully this is a short-term condition, and that the poison ivy, which is native, will be replaced, or over time will be removed, and other plants can grow. Boy, we've got some other charmers here. Here's some ragweed coming in too. I would imagine that it won't be too much longer before they get some seeds down in there. Or if there are other seeds besides poison ivy waiting to grow there, that those will start to take over. All right, I think we're moving on here. Now, I have to say, this is not from this year. This is a picture I took, gosh, at least a couple of years ago. I put it in though today because I was not fast enough to get a picture of the visitor that was in my front yard on Saturday. I could not believe it. I came back from that Johnson's Mound field trip, and there was a monarch in my front yard. And my first thought was, oh my goodness, it must be, looking for something to nectar on. In the front yard, I don't have a lot that's blooming. In the backyard, there's some golden Alexanders that are up now and are blooming. But I thought, oh, I hope the little butterfly finds what it's looking for. It didn't occur to me at the time that it was kind of hanging out on one plant in particular in my front yard, a plant that I didn't even plant. It just sort of came up, and it came up in a bad spot. It's in a crack in one of many cracks in my driveway. It was on a milkweed plant, and I looked the next morning, and look at this. There's not 1, but 2 eggs on that little milkweed plant in my driveway. Now, I don't know. I always associate monarchs with their arrival being later. I did look up, and there's a couple different places you can look to track the progress of things like monarchs and hummingbirds. There's a website called Journey North. A lot of classrooms use that to tie into units. A lot of teachers will tie in, say, geography with science, and they'll talk about, animals that migrate to different places. So Journey North has maps where you can follow different species as they travel northward, one of which is the monarch butterfly. iNaturalist, you can track sightings on there as well. And there have been a few other monarchs seen in the Chicago area, so this wasn't like it was the first one. And to me, I don't know, it just seems really early. I also looked up on the Illinois Department of Natural Resources website what they had to say about monarchs, and they said that they said April for appearing in Illinois, but IDNR, they cover the whole state. So I don't know if when they say April in Illinois, if they mean April in Northern Illinois or if they mean April in Southern Illinois, because our state is so long that there really are two very different sets of climates that we experience in our home state here. But yeah, super cool. Now, I have not checked the egg. This was on Sunday and it's Tuesday now. I would imagine if they didn't get eaten that they might have hatched. I'll have to go and see what's happening down there and see if they are hanging in there. I am not going to bring it in. I did try rearing some monarchs a few years ago. I was not good at it. They didn't have any failures, but it was so stressful. Counting, especially when they're really small, when they pop out of an egg that's that size, some of them don't even survive because they start chewing on the milkweed and they drown in the thick sap. That's how tiny these caterpillars are. But I'm hoping that this early in the season, there's not a lot of predators living on this small plant. The leaves are nice and tender. I know that female monarchs tend to select for that leaves for the growth like that. So we'll see. Maybe you can see some monarchs in your neighborhood too. This is that cocoon that I held up earlier before we had to come inside here. Can you see it? I tell you, the camouflage of these things is just remarkable. We actually use this picture as part of a video that we'll be showing later this week at our all staff meeting, telling people if they can to leave as many leaves in place as possible. I know a lot of people get out there with their rakes or their leaf blowers, or their lawn service gets out there with the rakes and the leaf blowers, and they make all this stuff go away. But this is where these cocoons are hanging out. And if we take that material away, we take our moths away too. So yeah, it's just really stunning how those can blend in so well. This is the Polyphemus moth, so that what's inside that cocoon. I would imagine, let's see, we're almost up to mid-May. A couple people have told me that they have found Luna moths already too. That again, that seems kind of early, but if the Luna moths are coming out, Luna moths as well as Polyphemus, Cecropia, they are all representatives of our giant silk moths that we have in this area. And they sort of keep to the same schedule. They don't do mass emergences like some of our other insects do, but they do tend to come out at about the same time. So hopefully our little Polyphemus will develop in time to come out and find another Polyphemus moth so we can get more caterpillars and more cocoons. These guys, I'm sure we've talked about this before, but they are large. This moth is about the size of my hand. And if we zoom in here, we see this magnificent fluffy antennae. They're feather-like. This would indicate that this particular individual, which we raised from a caterpillar at the Nature Center a few years ago, this is a male. Those both the male and the female will have feathery looking antennae, but when the feathering is broad like this, that indicates male. If it was a little bit shorter cropped, that would indicate female. He uses these to sense the pheromones of the female. That's all they do at this stage is mate and die. They don't even have mouth parts. So really, really fascinating part of our local ecosystems. And hopefully this one that's out on the deck now, there is a little cover over the aquarium. It's not going to drown. I don't know if it ended up raining or not, but raining harder. But anyway, we're going to keep an eye out for that. I'll let you know how this little one comes out. Just a little quick, this came in as in an email from our friends Jim and Sue, who actually live not too far from Johnson's Mound. Look who was waking up the other day. This was underneath a flower pot that Jim had moved. It's a little garter snake, little eastern garter, probably from was probably a young of the year from last year. Looks to be, maybe a foot or so long, but the snakes are out. In fact, in our Johnson's Mound field trip, we did see two snakes, a garter as well as a fox snake, but unfortunately, neither one of them was still living. The garter looked as though a predator had grabbed it, had some injuries about mid-body that looked consistent with either teeth or talons. The fox snake, I don't know what it was. It was definitely dead, but it wasn't smashed. It didn't look like it had been run over. Maybe it got hit by a bicycle. I know people do bike on the mound there. Don't know, but I was happy that this little one, although it probably wasn't happy at being disturbed the way it was on the morning when Jim found it, but happy that it's got a nice home there near the mound. Quick little thing, these are popping up now. This people look at this and they go, oh, look at the pretty phlox. Well, this is the not phlox. This is a member of the mustard family called Dame's rocket. You can identify it pretty quickly by the 1, 2, 3, 4 petals that its flowers have. This is actually the plots that well, Jim, Diane, I know you guys have been working on them. I think we really need to get a burn through there to get out some of this weedy material. These are starting to proliferate in one of the plots over at the Davis School area. This was a growing, not mowing plot. There's 5 of them by the school there. The intent is great. It's to cut down on labor, on gas emissions. There's sort of an internal conflict at the park district, though, about whose responsibility these actually are. What we would like to see are these. This is native phlox. And you can see the petals here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this is more of a woodland plant, and these plots are more of a prairie setting, a full sun setting. But this is something I remember actually buying some Dame's rocket years ago at a plant sale, because the woman told me they are vigorous and easy to grow. And they are pretty, but they will, being members of the mustard family, like garlic mustard, these seeds, these flowers are going to form many, many seeds. And it doesn't take long for this plant to take over in an area. One last little thing here. I was on the search I did a talk today at the Geneva Public Library, and we are getting ready for cicada emergence 2024. I thought I would take a look in downtown Geneva after that talk to see if there was any signs, any holes in the ground of cicadas coming up. These are holes, but they're not cicada holes. I don't know what they are. There were these little grubs that were near some of the holes, and so I don't know if, and the grubs didn't look all that healthy, so I don't know if these holes were a treatment of some sort. This was all at the base of a fir tree that's growing along 3rd Street. but I looked in several different places that I remembered seeing cicadas in 2007. Downtown Geneva is our best hope for some hearing and seeing cicadas in any numbers. Not nearly as many as we see farther east, but they should be showing up there in the next few weeks. Oh, I forgot I should toss this in. I saw this and I thought, oh my gosh, is it time for cottonwood already? It wasn't. This is a nest that fell out of a tree. I'm guessing it was from a squirrel. It's all this is all polyfiber fill. Um, it's not quite time for cottonwoods yet. Give those another couple of weeks. And folks, let's end with a smile. I saw a chipmunk the other day and its cheeks were so full. I thought, how in the world is it going to fit back down in its hole again? And it reminded me of this little funny. Hope it puts a smile on your face as we wind up another session here. Let's turn the share off and open it up to you guys. Is there any questions? Looks like we got a few chats here to get to. Janice, yeah. Yeah, wind, thunder, lightning. Oh gosh, spell the play. Oh, wood betony. Janice, betony. Wood is the first part, so WOOD, and then betony, BET is in Tom, O, N is in Nancy, Y. Wood betony. And Diane, that's great news. Spring peepers, we are one of the few counties around Chicago, and spring peepers are not as common as we travel around. They are kind of fussy, and they were thought to be in decline even out here in Kane County for a while. So I'm glad to know that you're hearing them too. So it's not just in Fearston Creek. I know we also hear them in the wetlands in the Hickory Knolls Natural Area too. So all good news. Frogs, they're important indicators because they live part of their life in the water and the rest of their life on land. So they, if there's something wrong with either of those areas, it's going to show up in a lack of frogs. So good to hear that those guys are doing good. And yep, parking lot. Yeah, is pretty typical for these killdeer. Oh, so they were at the play area today, huh? So yeah, the killdeer, they love areas where they can, run, broad flat areas where they can run in and not have a lot of grasses or anything in their way. So parking lots, rooftops, playgrounds, those are all very common places to see these really cool birds. Oh, morning glory. I had not heard that, Wallace. I'll have to check into that too. I would suppose anything that you can use to get those little hairs away and off of your skin. I'll have to keep that in mind. I don't know, I would imagine that would include bindweed as well. We've certainly got lots of that growing different places around our natural areas as well. So you think that's early too, huh, Difer? It really surprised me that not only was the monarch back, but it was laying eggs. So
I used to, I haven't done it for a while, but I used to, I do a few every year now just for educational purposes, but I used to rear a lot of monarchs, and I can't remember ever the beginning of May finding eggs. That's extremely early.
yeah, well, I guess maybe it caught a good tailwind. Who knows what its story was.
Well, I mean, once the milkweed comes up, it's possible. And I have been seeing milkweed, little sprouts of milkweed, but it's still very early. It's early for milkweed to come up because the soil has to be warm for the
True.
milkweed to sprout.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
it's just unusual.
it was such a surprise, and I was not even thinking about it laying eggs. My concern was more, oh gosh, I hope it can find something to nectar on. And yeah, lo and behold, there they were.
Wow.
So, what are we doing, huh? And Jim and Diane, yes. So a little Jim and Diane are stewards of those the plots at Davis, so they've graciously stepped up to start to intervene. Again, these plots have been the orphans of the park district for some time now. We have had a change in personnel in the Parks Department. Previous administrator there had felt that burning was not going to be feasible. He didn't want to have to tell the school to turn their ventilation systems off. But yeah, if we can get a burn in there, I think those flats would turn around pretty quickly. There's some great stuff growing there. There's some showy goldenrods. There's a lot of monarda. There's some very nice plants, coneflowers and things like that. So fingers crossed, we'll see some big changes there this summer and in the coming years. Folks, we have gone way over. I know we started a little bit late and we had that intermission because of the storm, but appreciate you hanging in here till this late hour. And we're going to go around and collect the caterpillars and put them in her garden to grow. Yeah. You know, people do funny things, don't they? In fact, somebody was telling me they were wondering if we might someday have cicadas here again because they knew of someone who had brought some out here from I don't know, Lombard or somewhere east of here. We do move things around a lot. I know that, well, the caterpillar, the cocoon I picked up because I thought for sure it was going to get squished in the park that it was going to over at Bakerfield Park. There was a lot of renovation going on. In fact, I'm a little torn when the moth comes out. Do I take it back to Bakerfield? Do I let it go here, which is like 4 blocks from there? I want to make sure it finds a Polyphemus friend. Lots to decide. It's getting late, folks. I really appreciate you hanging in here till 9:15. Have a lovely rest of your evening. Great rest of your week. I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Pam.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
Pam.
Good night.